Okay, this is now the Tarot Q&A number 19. And if you saw the last one, the last video about how to be the composer of your own life, after I uploaded the video, a couple of days later, I came across an interview with Joni Mitchell. And I'm giving you the link down below. And after about the interview itself is very good. And about 9 minutes and 40 seconds in, she talks about music. And if you watch that 1.5, 2 minute section, she may give you some ideas about how to compose, or how to be the composer of your own life. But today, I'd like to talk about the suits of the tarot. And people will often take us when let's say a minor trump comes up, the Four of Cups, they'll immediately switch, or they'll start talking about the astrological element of water and what it means. And the problem is that most people don't understand the 4 astrological elements, but also your questioner probably doesn't understand it anyway. Whereas everybody knows what a cup is, and everybody knows a sword and a baton and a coin. We can make sense of those. So what I'd like to do, or what I'd like to do today, is look at the 4 suits and the things that represent them, so that we can get an idea of the kinds of things we might talk about in a reading or when giving an answer to a question. So instead of saying the Four of Cups, we talk about, we give certain kinds of information and certain kinds of thought, and maybe make certain suggestions if it's cups that we wouldn't make if it was batons or swords or coins. And I'd like to look a little bit, I wrote down three words to remind me for each of the 4 suits. And I think you'll get the hang of it once I give you the example of cups. So with cups, I wrote down social, finishing touch, and drinking alone. So with a cup, think for yourself about what cups mean to you and might mean to anybody. Because you think of a cup, and it's easy to think of a cup of tea or a cup of coffee in a restaurant, in a kitchen, in a living room with a friend or two. So cups in their own way represent sociable behaviour or sociability. So cups upside down can mean that you're on your own, or you don't have people that you can connect with, or you don't have know people or currently have people who are on the same page as you, we might say. Right, so that's from a cup. So you might find that you talk about the importance of friendship, or maybe you don't have the right people as your friends because the cup card is upside down. And the thing is, if you talk about it as a cup and talk about what cups can mean, your question is going to understand, and they're going to be able to make sense of what you say. So cups can represent sociability and relationships with people, with groups, as well as with one individual. And they're going well or going badly, you're friendly or you're unfriendly. You get a good response from people if the cup is upright, but they don't understand you, or you get the wrong answer, or you get an answer you don't like if the cup is upside down. Then I was thinking, okay, you're in a restaurant, you've had dinner, and the waiter or the waitress comes along and says, would you like coffee and dessert? Right, so you think coffee. So in a way, a cup of coffee in that circumstance is the finishing touch for the meal. So maybe with cups, you find yourself talking about the finishing touch to the project, or the finishing touch that's necessary if there's going to be a good outcome of the process or of the relationship or whatever the question happens to be about. So maybe you say you find yourself reminding the questioner it's important to dot the I's and cross the T's, as they say. So you make sure that you've You've thought of everything you can think of, and that you've actually dealt with it or handled it or set something in order or in motion so that the thing can work out the way you want. And that's kind of like cups being the finishing touch, or making sure that you're aware of the need or the fact that there's going to be an ending, and let's make sure that it's the kind of ending that makes you happy or that you would look for. And then I was thinking of drinking alone is what I wrote down, because, you know, if you've ever been miserable or unhappy or bad relationship, or you've been dumped or whatever, you sometimes feel like drinking alone. And maybe that's what cups reversed can represent, so that you need to go off and drown your sorrows, or just be unhappy on your own for a while, and then you get over it, and then you're back into the world. So it can be a temporary self-absorbed, painful, being miserable time, and you need an anesthetic, right? So you drink or you do what you do just to ease the pain or to numb the pain a bit. And that can be cups reversed as well. So you might find with cups reversed, you don't talk about drinking alone and drinking too much, but maybe you talk about somebody wants to know what's going to happen in the future. So you may find yourself talking about, you feel lonely, you feel isolated, and so you probably feel the need to separate yourself from other people and spend a bit of time alone, just recovering and getting over the breakup or the fact that the situation didn't work out the way you wanted. Do you know what I mean about thinking about cups and what they represent and what you would make of them, and therefore what kinds of things you would say to people that relate to your understanding of the cup? Then for batons, in the rider deck, I wrote tree branches and don't need our help. So in the rider deck, the suit of batons is like a piece of living wood, and I couldn't help but think of a tree. And you may not know this about trees, but you can tell how big or how long the roots are by looking to see where the branches go, or how far out the branches go, because if the branch is out to here, the root is out to here as well, because apparently tree branches don't grow longer than the root is. Which made me think, okay, if with the suit of batons, if batons comes up in the answer, is it important to say to the questioner, make sure that you've got a good foundation, or you've got a good root, or a good root system? That if you're getting a promotion, do you have supporters on a lower level, let's say? Or you can see the branches of a tree, but you can't see the roots. So have you asked yourself about the invisible factors at work, or the people you would normally ignore, and made sure that they're on your side as well? Do you know what I mean? The idea of the root's important, and so pay attention to what's going on under the surface or under the ground, because it's the roots really that determine how big the tree can grow. So it may be your underlying support system that determines how far you go. And I was thinking, I mean, with that in a relationship, if you've had good relationships in the past, or you understand about people, then you've got a better chance of having a good relationship in the future. But if you're sort of stuck in the past and reliving bad experiences from previous relationships, that's not a good root system for strong growth in the future. So maybe you would look at the foundation of the question or the situation or the solution if the suit of batons comes up. The other thing is, trees grow on their own and they don't need help. You know, they don't need people to weed or really do anything, because trees have got their own life force. They're going to grow where they want, or where the seed falls. And that can be an important part of the suit of batons as well. And the kind of information that you give people, or the suggestions that you make. So you maybe point out that the project or the situation has a life of its own, and it's going to do what it's going to do. And it doesn't need your help to make it stronger or make it better, because it's got its own life that it's going to live. So it may be another person that you know. So am I going to meet somebody and it's a suit of batons? This is somebody who, or it can be somebody who, they are themselves and they don't need help to be improved. So if you've got the idea that there's an old story or a common theme where the woman marries somebody because she's going to change him. I mean, men can marry women because they think, okay, she's not quite right at the moment, but I'm going to make her better. That doesn't work. Especially if the potential mate is represented by the suit of batons. They're not going to take kindly to somebody interfering with them or trying to mold them or point them in a certain direction. Coins is money. And I wrote exchange, giving and receiving, and unequal. So if you think money is giving and receiving, it's exchange. So you've got something I want, and you want $20, and I think it's only worth $5, but I'll give you $6. So we put a value on things, and then we negotiate or put a price on it, and then if you've got a taker, then that's what's going on with the suit of coins. There's giving and receiving and exchange. So maybe with the suit of coins, you think about what's the valuable thing that is up for grabs or up for offer or up for sale, or that is on the table, so to speak, and is available for somebody to give up and somebody to take over. And maybe the idea of taking over would work for the suit of pentacles as well. So with coins, you're looking at who's giving and who's receiving. And maybe coins upside down can mean that the exchange is unequal. So one person is giving too much and the other person is taking too much or expecting too much. And it's maybe like it's all, you're doing all the giving and the other person's doing all the receiving, and that doesn't work. So maybe that would be represented by pentacles reversed. Inequality or an unequal exchange, whatever form the exchange would take depending on the question that was asked. And then last was swords. And I wrote attack or defend, best general, and physical. So with a sword, you can attack or defend. So maybe if depending on the question, you figure out, or the questioner figures out, to what extent are they going to attack and try and clear the problem, get rid of it, or to what extent are they going to let the problem come to them and they'll defend themselves as best they can. So you take action or you hold back and defend yourself. So it's defensive action. And that can be the idea that you pass on to the questioner depending on the question. And I wrote down best general because years and years ago I read this story about what makes a good general, and it was a Chinese philosophy thing. And I can't remember the details, but it was like there were different levels of ability among fighting people, generals. But the best general was the one who never fought a battle, because he didn't actually go into battle because he knew he was going to win, and his opponents knew they were going to lose. So the best general was the one who didn't actually do any fighting. And that could be an interesting and useful solution if somebody has a question and swords come up. Do you even need to fight in the first place? How can you set things up so that it's clear that the other person's going to lose, so they just walk away? They don't bother engaging you to fight. but they go away, and that's the best general, the person who knows how to give the impression of strength, maybe, or who makes it clear that if you take me on, you're going to lose. So don't bother. I used to know a policeman in Toronto. His name was Ted. He was a big fellow. And there was he worked in the downtown area in Toronto. And there was one night he was called to a restaurant, and there was a narrow stairway down to the washroom area. And there was somebody down there with a machete. So Ted, he was dressed as a policeman, and he gets called to walk. And so he walks down the stairs, and he sees the fellow with the machete. And he takes out his gun. And he says to the fella, look, I'm really scared, and I'm really nervous, and I've got a gun in my hand, and it could well go off. But, you've got a machete and I've got a gun. I'm going to win. So why don't you just put your machete down and we'll go upstairs and we'll talk about this. The fella put down his machete, and Ted didn't. So that's, I think, the kind of thing I was meaning about the general, where you just make it clear that there's no way you can win, so why even bother trying? You're better to live with the consequences of not trying. At least you're in good shape. And the other thing I wrote down was physical, because I was thinking about sword fencing and I suppose a Game of Thrones that I watched a bit of. And it's really very physical activity if you're having to fight people and you've got a big heavy sword. So you have to be in good shape if you're going to fight people. But then I thought good shape can be transferred to different areas of life as well. So let's say you're going to become a manager of a small company or a small department. If you're going to be successful, you have to be, let's say swords come up. So you find yourself talking about, you need to be in good shape for this new challenge. So if you have to manage people, do you have any ideas about how to manage people? If you have to get people to do what they don't want to do, are you going to be able to do that? Are you in good shape to handle people who don't want to be handled? To handle people who don't want to do what you want them to do? Do you know, that kind of thing? So good shape, or a relationship, you can have had, again, bad relationships in the past, and you keep revisiting that bad situation. So you're not really in good shape to have a good relationship in the future until you learn a few things. Or let's say you're going to go somewhere as a tourist and you don't speak the language. Why not get in better shape and learn a bit of the vocabulary and the customs, so that when you get to this place where you're going, you'll feel more at home and you'll be more comfortable. I years ago went to Greece in 1973, and I didn't like it, partly because I couldn't read the street signs and I couldn't read the names of the stores. And I felt kind of alien and not comfortable. Whereas I can go to Germany and I can at least read the language, or read the words. But Greece, I didn't like it. So I was stuck with English or French or whatever it happened to be. But I didn't like the fact that I didn't know how to read the street signs. I knew a couple of letters, but that was it. So maybe that's getting in good shape, is before you go somewhere or get to a certain situation, learn something so that when you get to the new place, you can get more out of the experience. Those are some thoughts about, for you to consider, what's a cup? What does it mean? What does it look like? What does it suggest? Coins, swords, and batons. What can you do with them? And then you'll find that when you can talk about them generally or specifically, depending on the suit, your questioner is going to get an awful lot more out of the reading. That was it. Thank you very much. Goodbye. See you next time.